Whether you're a seasoned vet of the payments industry or a brand new rookie who just heard the term dual pricing for the first time, you're in the right place. This is the only podcast that shares the strategies and stories behind selling merchant services, all from the perspective of those on the front lines. Welcome to AgentFirst.
All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the AgentFirst Podcast. I'm Justin Volrath, host extraordinaire, I guess I would call myself. I'm excited for this one. Got a good friend of mine here, Tim Toombs. We've worked together for many years, known each other for many years. Consider him a great friend, great dude. And Tim, the whole point of this podcast has never been about telling the story of pay compassers, telling Justin Volrath's story. I've done that on some of the podcasts, but really it's about inspiring others, right? Mm-hmm. We've been doing this for a long time, but there are people who are brand new that are struggling, that maybe don't understand, some of the history of things or how to get through them. That's really what this is. So we love just kind of helping to guide others, inspire others through the storytelling of of some awesome stories of people that have been in this industry like you. Yeah. And so, your accent, you're obviously from Boston, right?
Yonkers, actually. Yonkers.
Okay, yeah, okay. Actually from Nashville, right? And I just love for you to kind of maybe tell your story. I don't think I know your full story, how you got into it. I know some of the middle parts and where you're at now, but love to hear maybe how you got into this crazy industry.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And it's, I think if you've made it any time in this industry, you've got some stories.
That's
right?
for sure.
All good salespeople to me are just good storytellers. That's all we're doing. We're just telling stories.
Amen. Some of them true.
Yeah, some of them even are true. But, so the way I got into this business is, kind of the short version is I took a part-time job at a Budweiser distributor house just as kind of winter work. A neighbor of mine worked there. He was like, hey, we're hiring some help. Why don't you come up there? I wanted to work on my short game, golf, and, focus on that. And we were good. Emily and I were good. We had our oldest son at the time. And, we were happy. And I was like, I'll do it. I mean, what else am I going to? I've got nothing else coming out.
Like the warehouse?
Yeah. So I went into the warehouse and they called it just help. Literally a driver would come in and be like, I want you. I'll take you. So you were hired help for the day. Much like if you were to drive through a Home Depot in the afternoon or early in the morning, you got a group of guys that's like, hey, I got a plumbing job. Who wants it? And here they come, right? So I was the hired help. And the guy that was running the inside at the time, he was like, hey, you need to get your CDL. So I did it because he told me to, not because I had any interest in it. But long and short, within 6 months, I got my own route, right? Yeah. I got my own sales route, which was kind of unheard of. And
that's
it was
almost impossible that early, Yeah,
I didn't miss work. I showed up because that's the way I was raised, right? You show up, you do what you say you're going to do. Which we'll talk about later. I think it plays a lot into this. And just kind of really, for whatever reason, it just really was easy for me, right? So me and this other gentleman were kind of 1 and 2.
Yeah.
We were fighting every month, 1 and 2. He got Salesman of the Year. Next year, we were going at it. I was going to beat him. He quit. But he quit to go do this credit card business. Yeah. And I was like, I don't even understand what you're talking about, man.
Right,
what kind of magic happens when you swipe your credit card or the knuckle buster or whatever. I don't know what goes on. You're selling credit cards to people.
For Visa?
Yeah. So I see him 2 or 3 months later. He's at one of my stops, and his name's Jason Carter. And he says, and I see him, and he's in a new truck, right? He's got new clothes. He just looks good. I'm like, that's not the Jason that I remember. You talked about my accent, right? I feel fairly articulate compared to this gentleman. I mean, this guy, it was kind of tough to understand him, but he was killing it. And he was telling me this money he was making. I was like, there's Jason. There's no way. He said, I will meet you. Where are you going to be tomorrow at this time? And I told him. He showed up, showed me some checks, showed me 5 checks. And I was like, okay, if you can do that, I can do it. Get me an interview.
Yeah.
Right? Well, my boss is in town. Perfect. So we set up an interview for the next night. I walk in, I sit down. The guy that hired me is actually still in this business. Shout out to Scott Griffin.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, Scott Griffin hired me.
Scott Griffin, I know
Scott Griffin hired me into this industry. Yeah.
Okay, wow.
So this is 2003, 2004. We're sitting at a Jim and Nick's barbecue, and he said, why should I hire you? I said, you shouldn't. I have no idea what I'm even here for. I said, but what I will tell you is if I'm not making the money I need to make in 6 months, you won't have to fire me. I'll be gone. But the other thing I'll tell you is I will outwork everybody else on your team. That's a promise. And he was like, all right, well, I don't really have the authority to offer. And we talked a little bit more, and he said, give me a second. And he walked away and came back. He said, you got the job. I was like, okay, cool. What does it pay? He was like, oh, no, it's 100% commission. I was like, okay. So explaining to your wife on December 12th, 13 days before Christmas, that you're about to take your first day into a commission-only job is about to take place.
Right.
That was a hard sell. So that may have been the first hard sell of my life that I had to make. But Emily believed in me. She trusted me, right? Yeah. So Scott shows up to the house to do the training. I get a 3-ring binder. We're sitting there. We're going through the state. Yeah, man. Everybody needs a pitch book, right? I get a few videos. Look at this computer. Isn't that awesome? I was like, yeah, this is great. So the math made sense to me. It was really simple. He gave me, in my welcome to the team thing, gave me some temporary cards. Do you remember these? Mm-hmm. They had a little line at the bottom. You could write your name.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
So the next morning, I was so accustomed to waking up so early. I was up at like 4:30, dressed, ready to go, and just sitting in my coffee at the table, kind of just tapping, nervous, like, where's this guy? What's going on? What's going on? It's 6 o'clock. Why is he not here?
Yeah.
He shouldn't have been there at 6, right? He was supposed to be there at 8.
Right.
8:30, there's nobody.
Oh.
He gets food poisoning. Oh. So it's one of those moments that you're looking at your wife, and it's like, what are you going to do? You going to sit here and wait for somebody to get over food poisoning, or you? I did the only thing I knew to do. Yeah. I took a pen and I wrote on those 10 business cards my name and my phone number, and I went out and I talked to people that I knew, people that I thought trusted me, right? People that, and that's what you do. You work. If anybody's getting into this, that's where you start. You start with your friends. You start with your family, right? People that will allow you to mess up and understand that you're starting something new. So anyway, I go out. I'm doing my thing. I start calling people like, hey, I'm doing this now. Can you help me out? Can I come see? I need a statement. Yeah. What kind of statement? I don't know. I just need a statement.
They told me I need a statement. Yeah.
I was getting bank statements. I was getting, literally their personal Visa credit card statements. Right. I was getting everything. So I was so proud. I've got statements, Scott, right? The next day, he's still sick. He had gotten pretty sick the entire week. So much so that it was 3 days without him. I called a buddy of mine, and he said, hey, I'm going to meet, he was a food purveyor. He was selling for a food company. He said, hey, I'm going to meet a customer of mine. You'll like him. He's cool. I was like, all right, cool. I'll meet you over there. We'll grab a pizza or something. So we sat down. He walks out. He was like, hey, this is Tim. He's like, what do you do? I said, credit card processing. He was like, dime a dozen. You're on every corner. I was like, that's what I hear. That's what I'm being told. The last 3 days have been kind of rough, and I'd like to enjoy my lunch if I could. And he's like, I said, well, why don't you give me a chance at your business? He's like, you won't be in the business in 6 months. You guys are coming here. You promise the world. You disappear. You don't answer your phone. And he said, you know what? Come back tomorrow. So I came back tomorrow, and I sat there. And he was like, what can you do for me? Can you beat this price? Can you give me cost plus 8 cents? I was like, wait, I heard that in a training video. I know I can do cost plus 8 cents. Cost plus had just come out. Interchange pricing. It was, we're getting away from the tiered pricing models. So I was like, yes, absolutely. I had no idea.
No idea what you're talking about.
Step outside, and I called Jason. I was like, can I do cost plus 8? He was like, yeah, man, you can do it. So while back in, I said, I can make it happen. He disappears for like an hour. An hour's gone. And I'm like, he's changed his mind. I'm just going to pack myself up and leave. Yeah, it's over with. I've done something, obviously. He goes back, he sets a piece of paper down. This is day 3 of the job, okay? He sets a piece of paper down, and he says, I've called all these places, and they're prepared. They know what they need. I own 18 pizza places, and we're going to go with you. God's honest truth. Holy cow, Tim. God's honest truth. So my first week in the business, I signed 18 pizza locations. Scott got better the next day when he found that out. So Scott's driving me around. We're signing paperwork. I have no idea what I'm doing. This is back in the day of carbon fiber, or not carbon fiber, but the carbon. Yeah.
You
fill
Press
it out.
hard. There are 3 copies.
You pop one out. They get one. You get one goes to corporate, right? Yep. Type of thing. So that was my first week in the business. So I went out and I did the only thing I knew to do. But one of the things that I tell everyone that gets into this business now, brand new, this is one of the first, anybody I interview, anyone I speak to, and they're like, hey, what do I need to do? How did you make it? what's got you this far? One, don't give up, right? Don't give up on yourself. Stay consistent. But I never had anyone tell me that I couldn't be successful. And I think as leaders, sometimes when we're interviewing someone to come into the business, we're telling them all the pitfalls, which we should. But sometimes I think we set people up to not be successful by doing that because we're telling them, hey, it's hard.
Right.
It's really hard. You're not supposed to be successful. No one told me I wasn't. And I wouldn't have believed it anyway. I thought signing 18 deals was normal.
Right.
Your first
right,
no,
right.
because I didn't know any different, right? I learned later that was an anomaly. It did get tougher, but I felt like the harder I worked, the luckier I got. So I spent a lot of time. Link System out of Atlanta is actually where I started. Which started into the whole RBS Link, RBS WorldPay, WorldPay umbrella. So that's where I spent about 14 or 15 years of my career.
What year was that when you started?
It had to be it was right before they sold. So I think it's like 03, 04.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So
22 years in this.
Yeah, really unique.
Wow.
It was a really unique experience. I was watching a lot of people. All the people that were there when I first got there were disappearing, the higher ups, because they had just got the big payday. I think it was one of the largest acquisitions at the time.
Yep.
In the payment space.
It's huge. Yeah.
It was really big. That's kind of my first week. How I got into it was just kind of serendipitous on accident.
Yeah.
Only because the guy that I ran into could do it. I was like, well, if you can do it, I can do it.
Right.
I knew nothing about it.
Right.
But that's how I got into the business. That was literally my first week into the business. Right.
It's so true. I mean, everybody that has a story, none of us grow up saying, I'm going to be a credit card processing sales guy when I grow up, right? I mean,
I've never been invited.
I've
never been invited to a career day.
Yeah. I didn't even know to me, I thought you swiped your card and it went straight to Visa MasterCard. I didn't know there was a thing as, process in the middle. It made no sense to me. And, still sometimes doesn't really. Yeah. But, so you talked about it early on, the tough sale you had to make with your wife, with Emily.
Yeah.
I know you're like me and my wife. You guys been together since high school.
Yep.
And so tell me, I know she's played a huge part in supporting you, and not even more than supporting you, being there, being your partner through all of this. Yeah. So let's talk about that, because there are people out there that are maybe struggling with that part too.
I promise I wasn't going to cry. I'm kidding.
It's okay.
I'm joking.
We're gonna cry.
So, I make this.
I'm a softie, buddy. You and I both are softies.
I make this statement, and I mean it with full conviction. Behind every decent man or good man is an incredible woman.
Yep.
And there were days I came home from, because my recipe for success in the beginning was cold call. Mm-hmm. That's all. After I worked my network, I couldn't wait a month for the statement to show up to go back in and go, see, I told you I was right. Like, who else can you send me to that I don't know, right? Which comes later in life. That's another part that you've got to work. But, Emily, I would come home from 40 cold calls and 40 no's, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 2 weeks in a row. And she was just like, you're that much closer. It's okay. You got it. And I can remember specifically this one cold call that I did, Swain's Hardware in Jolton, Tennessee. I walk in, Swain's Hardware was just, it's a very small community, top of the hill kind of thing. You go in, Mr. Swain was standing behind the register.
Yep.
Just old NCR cash register, stood up in his walker with the tennis balls on the bottom. Gave him my card and was like, hey, I'd love the opportunity to earn your business, Mr. Swain. You knew my grandfather. And he was like, can you not read? I was like, sir? Sorry, did you not read that sign, non-solicit? I was like, I just thought maybe because we knew each other. He said, and he flicked the card back in my face.
Oh, wow.
And that was a defining moment for me, because it had already been a really rough 2 weeks. And I watched that card kind of just slow motion and slide under this dusty old shelf. I went outside to my truck and I got a coat hanger, and I came back in and I fished that card, because I was like, I'm not leaving my card here. He doesn't deserve my card. And I cussed that windshield all the way home. I mean, I was hot. I was so mad. I think it was like 2:30 or 3 o'clock. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah. I
can't handle this anymore. And I got home, and Emily was like, hey, I know you've been having a rough week or two. Mm-hmm. I forget what it was, but she bought me a new shirt. She bought me a new pair of pants, new shoes. Right?
Yep.
It's just crazy. You go out the next week, had the best week of my life.
You feel different, right? Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's nuts. So yeah, Emily, I'm here and sitting here. I'd be under a bridge if it wasn't for Emily. She's she's the driving force.
Right.
Her and the kids.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Absolutely, brother. I think that's so true of so many people. I mean, you've coached hundreds, if not thousands, of people in your career, just like I have, and you see that happen so many places. Where there's that, maybe that spouse that I don't want to say they're not supportive, but they maybe just don't understand, right? They don't really understand what's going on. They don't really understand that that is a big part of it. Or if you're single, that you have supporting cast of people around you, whether it's family, friends, other coworkers that are helping you through those, because there are a lot more valleys than there are mountains, and definitely in that beginning for sure.
One is a lonely number.
Yeah,
it's a very lonely number, and you almost feel isolated on an island. And you need somebody to call. You need someone when you're driving in between something to pull you out of that gutter, right? Yeah. And so, accountability, partners, whatever you want to call it. But it's always good to have somebody just to call and go, man, I'm getting my teeth kicked in. Yeah, that was me last week. I've closed 4 this week. What did you do? Right. What did you do? Talk to me. I've always said, I try to tell anybody that will listen to this is, when you have that fire, you got that flame and it's burning, it's so easy to light somebody else's. Just help them.
Yep.
Just take that 5 minutes to have that conversation. You have no idea what they're going through.
That's right. And
you have no idea what impact that conversation could have.
Yeah.
And, we talk about this. This industry is very, very incestual, right? Everybody knows everybody at this point.
Right.
And, there's some really, really good people in this business.
Amen.
Really good people. People that I can still call regardless of what my business card says. We've stayed in touch, right? There are people like that.
Yep.
They seem to be getting fewer and farther, between.
Yeah.
But there's still some such good people.
Great people. Yeah. This industry is full of them. I'm with you. It's it does not matter what the logo is on the business card. And I think what you said is a great point. And from an impact that you can have on others, you don't have to be a leader. You don't have to have a title of a leader. If your fire doesn't lessen or dim because you helped light somebody else's fire, right? And I'm sure you could have stories of this like I do, is how many times that somebody has said to me, hey, remember when you said XYZ to me? And I'm like, not really. That was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I really don't remember that conversation. But you realize that something you said had a massive impact and sent them down a different path that ended up leading to great success for them. And so it's those moments that seem inconsequential to you, right?
Yeah.
But could be massively impactful for somebody else.
You just never know what you're going to, it could be something as simple as saying, I believe in you. Like those simple words are, hey, you've got this. Think about this way. Do it this way. Try this. This worked for me last time I was in that type of environment, right? But, it's funny you say that, kind of changing topics a little bit here.
I'm the host.
I'm going to switch things up a little bit. When that first year, and during that interview with Scott, he was talking about this chairman's roundtable thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to go. He was like, well, and their year ran through like May 31st. It ended, and this was December. And he said, yeah, you got to be here a full 6 months, which you won't be to qualify to be a rookie of the year or anything. I said, what if I just make it out right? He was like, if you make it out right, I'll fight for you.
Yeah.
I made it out right.
Nice.
Right. I went and I made it. And I went to Reynolds, Ritz-Carlton, Lake Oconee, Reynolds Plantation, outside of Atlanta.
Okay.
And everybody was around the Infinity Edge pool. Drinks were flowing, having a big time. You know how these events are. I was walking around with a notepad talking to everybody saying, how did you get here? Like, what did you do? Yeah. They're like, well, you did it too. I'm like, no, I'm doing it the hard way.
Right.
Show me something. And a mutual friend of ours, I'll remember this, Richard Brown, actually took the time and sat with me for about 25, 30 minutes and spoke to me and told me some things. And he's the one that taught me to duplicate myself. Go and try to find a partner. Go and try to find this. Go and carve your own little thing. What do you like to do? And go do that, because you can talk to it. So, again, you just never know who you're going to impact or how it's going to. And, circle of life, right? Richard and I, we've past
that's crazy.
ships in the nights. We've
Yeah.
worked at the same companies together, and I've told this story and in front of a room full of people, and Richard be in it, and he's very humble about it. But it's you just never know who you're going to impact.
The humble dude. That's great. That's amazing. So let's talk about that now. So you've cold called. You got to the chairman's circle, and now your career has been changed. Obviously, you're not cold calling. After that,
Mm-hmm.
what did you start doing? Was it hiring more people? Was it networking? What
So
happened?
I remember where I was. I was 6 months in, and I'd called every day. I made Emily buy me shirts that had pockets on it, so I could carry 20 business cards before lunch and 20 after. I put 40 business cards in a decision maker's hand, right? And if it was a gatekeeper and I felt that way, I'd replace it. And there were some long days, and I tried to empty that pocket every day. I remember where I was signing up an additional location to that pizza shop 6 months later that he'd opened. That was in Dixon, Tennessee, and I got a phone call from a cold call I had done, I don't know, 4 months ago, and it was a no. I'd worked the statement. I said, hey, I can't help you. If I can ever do anything to help you, call me. He calls me up and says, hey, my buddy's got a place. He's having trouble. Go talk to him, right? So anyway, I go. So that was kind of my first foray into realizing, okay, if I'm doing things right, things will come back to me right. We had a partnership with Aloha, and it was dead. Nobody was working it. So I went and knocked on the door. I'm already cold calling everybody else. Why not cold calling Aloha dealership, right? So I walk in, I cold call, and I'm like, yeah. They wouldn't even let me in the door. I would bring donuts by. I brought pizza by. I just kept doing this. And one Friday afternoon, I got a phone call, and he said, this is your chance. This is your one and only. We have a customer we cannot get a VAR sheet for. If you can produce this for me. And I called everybody under the sun that I knew to call. I called my vice president, and he was like, and we got it done. And they got me in. And I kept working that relationship so hard. You may not know this, I actually officed in the Aloha dealership for 10 years.
Really?
Any deal they got that came through, they were with me. We didn't talk price. We didn't talk any of that. I was part of the deal. I was in embedded payments before anybody was talking about embedded payments.
It was embedded.
So that doing a lot of the networking stuff, the BNI, all the things you hear that you might feel are cliched, but when you can duplicate yourself, it's that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. So looking at today, we're kind of take a big departure here.
Okay.
I don't think we're old, but others would disagree maybe.
Better?
Better.
would be
Yeah,
the
more
word.
mature for sure.
Absolutely
I don't know
more
about
mature.
that, but
Physically.
physically, exactly. Is looking at some of the people that are getting into this industry now, and obviously things have drastically changed, right?
Yeah.
There is the integrated payments, there's the ISV side of it, but then there's also dual pricing, surcharging, all that. What do you feel is maybe better about today, but also maybe what is worse about today? What do you think are the things that are like, boy, I wish I had that when I was just out feet in the street versus, man, I'm glad I didn't have that when I was feet in the street, right?
Yeah. So I'll answer the what I wish I had, right?
Okay.
And you know the answer to this.
Yeah.
When this new pricing structure, this new pricing mechanism in 2015 surcharging was passed, right? And then that animal turned into people running their own cash discounting. And then so here we are with dual pricing, right?
Yep.
Having the ability to sell dual pricing the right way to where it benefits the merchant and it's not taking advantage of the end user, their customers.
Right.
It's life-changing. What a great time to be in this space, right? I mean, I'll go back and date myself, but when interchange pricing came out, and I was like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
What do you mean we don't have 3 tiers? We can do it this way now? It was really neat. Also, on the opposite side of that, you've got a lot of players. You got a lot of the, ISVs. You've got a lot of the Aloha. Even take Aloha for example. They've got their own processing now. Yep. People have figured out that, there's profit in it. There's a way to make some money in it. So I think you have to be a little craftier. I think there's still really good partnerships to have, and it goes back. Some things will never change, Justin. If you do what you say, right? If you will hold your word and you'll do what you'll say, or if you can't do it and you let them know, most people will be like, "That's cool. Thank you for letting me know."
Appreciate that, right? Yeah.
And you can work through just about anything. But I still think there's a really big opportunity in the ISV space, and just the person that's designing websites, the person that, as simple as, running a podcast studio. Who all's coming in here? What type of business owners are coming in? Right. That type of thing. You just have to get a little more creative. But I say these kids, I'll say it loosely, but these, people coming up now, there's so much more tech savvy.
Yeah.
Right. And you've got social media, you've got all this stuff. There's so many different ways to get out there.
Yeah.
And, you're seeing some really good sellers take advantage of that and kind of build their own brand.
Yep.
In the 1099 space, which is, if you're not building your own brand, start. You need to.
That's right. Because
this is your business and your livelihood.
Yeah.
I would tell someone starting out that would be the path I would take.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. I was talking with someone the other day, Rod Katzvai, and we were talking about how it's interesting how we went through this really big focus, 10, 15 years ago on partnerships, and everybody was battling for association partnerships, bank partnerships, and now a lot of people, and this is a big piece of advice for people listening out there too, I believe, is then, everyone is now shifted. A lot of these companies have shifted to we're going after ISVs, and that's the future partnerships. And while I agree, if you're not doing ISVs now, if you're not at least working down that path, you're behind, and you should be. But boy, there is still such an amazing, huge opportunity in the old school.
Yes.
Walk into the weird association in your town. I mean, I worked with the National Vacuum Cleaner Dealers Association, the Iowa Motor Truck Dealers Association. Like, they're everywhere. There are associations for associations, right? And partnerships with banks, and they're not tomorrow. They don't happen immediately. But those relationships are, I think, really huge, and I think there's a lot of opportunity out there in that.
Sometimes you find some really good revenue hiding behind the most obscure thing.
Yeah, great point.
Tennessee Tire Association was something that I worked.
There you go. Yeah,
and I'm a storyteller, so I'll tell this quick story. But I was doing a cold call on the last day of a month. I remember where I was, what I was doing. I'd been sitting at this one huge custom automotive place, and the guy had given me a yes 8 times, and I was like, he's signing. Today's the last day of the month. I need my 8th deal. It's happening. He's going to get a deal, but it's happening. It ain't going to be what I wanted it to be, but that's okay.
Yeah.
He wasn't there.
Yeah.
He was ghosting me. Just wasn't going to happen. So I was like, okay, what else is around? And I look down, I see a little frame shop, and I walk down this little frame shop, picture frame shop, custom picture frames. Sweet little old lady sitting in there, and I walked down. I said, hey, how are you? I introduced myself, and there's like a hoarder's path to her desk. Picture frames everywhere, and she was like, oh, hey, how are you? We get to talk, and I was like, well, I'd love the opportunity to earn your business. If, I see you take credit cards, and I see that terminal. It's a old Zon Jr. I said, that thing's kind of out of date. I can take care of you. And she was like, well, what do you need? And signed her up. And I wasn't the master of the one call close, because I didn't want that. If I could get it on a one call close, I was going to lose it on a one call close. And I didn't want that. So, but I needed it. So made her a great deal. And, I get a phone call from her. I don't know. No, it wasn't a phone call. I went back in to do just a review. Hey, Miss Sally, here it is. We're doing everything we said we could do. Justin, she processed maybe $500.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a micro merchant.
Yeah.
She was like, I gave your number to my son, and he's going to call you. And I said, okay, that's great. She's like, no, let's call him now. So she gets her son on the phone, and we're talking, and he's like, yeah, we do this and that. I ended up signing the Southeast United Framing Association as a partner.
Right.
And they were based in Nashville, and that fed me for like 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
They supplied all the wood and the framework,
Yeah.
all this
Most
stuff.
obscure thing. Yeah.
The most odd thing.
Yeah.
And there it was, hiding right there in plain sight.
That's so amazing. Yeah.
Hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
I was chasing the big one, and this one over here had something special with it.
Right. There's something behind that.
Just
I love
don't quit.
that. One last question before we wrap it up that I love. This is my favorite question to ask almost all of our guests is, there's somebody out there right now who's struggling, right? They're thinking about hanging it up. Their manager sucks. They're not sure if they're at the right company. They just don't. Hey, maybe this just isn't for me, right? What's that one piece of advice you give that person? Like, what would you say to them? They called you right now. You ran into them in the parking lot. Chin's dragging on the floor, right? What's that piece of advice you give that person?
First of all, get your head up, right?
Yeah.
This is a tough job. The second thing is just stay consistent. Just stay the course. Talk to somebody that that you trust. And if I happen to be that person, I would probably try to understand what they were doing. Like, hey, what are you doing? How are you?
Yeah.
What's happening here? But most importantly, just stay the course. If you're doing the right stuff, it's going to show up.
Keep doing it.
It's tough, right? I've seen the other podcasts. People say the same thing. You get a lot of people that will tell you, hey, if you don't have 6 months in the bank to live, it's going to be tough. And that can be true. But again, going back to my earlier statement, I don't want to tell anybody that, because you can find success. You can find an 18-location pizza shop when you don't even mean to. Right. So
great point. Just
stay the course. Find somebody that you trust. Talk to them and talk through it. It's always good to have someone outside the industry too. Yeah. But if you're at the wrong shop, the answer I would say is they need to call Justin Volrath. That's what I would say.
Love it.
So,
well, I think what you said earlier is a great point to wrap that up. Is just keep showing up, right?
That's it.
Secret to the success. Just keep doing it and just keep showing up, man. Well, great. Tim, love having you here. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for another great edition of the Agent First Podcast, and we'll see you next time.